Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Maggie Walker Project. I've recently had the pleasure of interviewing Gerard Gibbons, who is a former president and SVP of marketing at UPS. He is currently retired, but he still remains on the board of various public and private companies. But when he was working, he led a huge team consisting of people from all over the nation. He has an incredibly interesting story, so I really do implore you to listen to all of it. And we had a great conversation. It was super informative on how the corporate world works and how he rose to the corporate ladder. So without further ado, here's the interview. Enjoy. So you're retired now, but when you were in your most senior role, what was the name of your position?
So I retired from UPS as the president of S&D and U.S. marketing.
Mm-hmm. And what was some of the things that you did with your job? What would it entail?
So I was responsible for the U.S. marketing organization. I had responsibility for our customer experience. So think about, when you get a survey from a retailer and they ask you how that experience was, part of my job is making sure that all 3+ million UPS customers had a really favorable experience around pickup, delivery, tracking a package, how we acquire customers, support customers, engage customers. And then I also had responsibility for our field marketing organization, which basically was around sales enablement. So how we help the sales organization sharpen our value proposition, engage customers, differentiate UPS from our core competitors like the USPS and FedEx. And so in that role, I was responsible for about $19 billion in annual revenue. I had a team of people across the US and had a chance to do some really exciting things at UPS.
Wow, and so you did this at the national scale. So you did this just like for the overall country.
I did, yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah. So kind of like, what was the day in your life? What did it look like?
So it depends. The three big jobs I had at UPS before I retired. I ran the U.S. sales organization for a little over 7 years. Then I ran our global enterprise account group, which consisted of UPS's largest customers. So think about Apple, Dell, Honeywell, companies that had really large global supply chains. And then the last role that I was in was president of US S&D marketing. And so in that job, it was really about engaging the team. So, weekly conference calls with our teams and people that reported directly to me, engaging with the sales organization, working with our executive leadership team. So every day was different. So it's hard to say, what a day in the life looks like because each day was different. Each day had, unique challenges. But the way UPS operates is it really operates on a calendar. So I knew when we had, business plan reviews or leadership updates or whatever, specific meetings we had over the course of a month. And then within that, I had, my own time to lead my team and drive the things that I was held accountable for. So every day was unique, every day was different. And that's what made, my role at UPS so special was the fact that every day was different. So it was never boring, it was never monotonous, there was never a standard routine, but each day brought new challenges. And so within those challenges, you have to think, right? You have to be able to think and drive results, and so every day was different.
So you were always like working with new projects and like were there like new people you were working with, or was it just mainly like new projects that happened?
Usually it was a different project or some challenge, or the results aren't where they need to be, or the results are exceptional and how do we keep it going? Or some crisis with somebody on my team, or some crisis with a customer, or some crisis with leadership. So it was, or some people issues, and so it was it was always unique. Everything was different.
Could you give me like an example, of like maybe a little anecdote that you had like that was particularly exciting for you?
What was exciting?
Yeah, like one of the projects that you worked on that you really
So
liked.
two things, well, a couple. So one, I had responsibility for diversity marketing at UPS, and so when you think about women and minority-owned businesses, they really drive a lot of economic growth in America. And more times than not, companies don't focus on those businesses and how do you help those businesses grow, because if they grow, we grow. It's great for everybody. And so a couple of things we did. One, at the end of my career, we did this webinar series. And this was really during the pandemic, where we wanted to give practical advice to small business owners on how they can sustain their business through the pandemic. And so I had an opportunity to interview Magic Johnson, who is one of my, heroes growing up, one of my childhood heroes growing up. And so, I grew up in Los Angeles. I was there when Magic came to the Lakers. I'm a lifelong Lakers fan, big Magic Johnson fan, both what he's done on and off the court. And so you think about that, this kid that grew up idolizing Magic, at the end of my career, I get to interview him for our webinar series, which was about an hour interview of me and him doing some Q&A. And it was fantastic. To this day, I think it's the largest attended webinar series that UPS has hosted. We had, I think, 8,000 people that tuned in. So it was a big deal. And then on the heels of that, I had a chance to do the same thing with Grant Hill, the great basketball player from Duke University. And then I did this thing with Damon John from Shark Tank. So again, trying to give practical advice to small, mid-sized businesses navigating through the pandemic. And so that was a huge success with Damon from Shark Tank. So those were probably three things that were really exciting, really towards the end of my
That's
career.
really cool. And I guess what's the intersection of that with UPS and I guess working with other businesses to promote diversity? Because usually when we think of UPS, we think of delivering packages, right? So I guess what's the intersection of that and how that relates?
So as it relates to UPS, we have these business resource groups, and so there's a women's business resource group, there's the African American BRG, there's the Latino BRG, there's a veterans business resource group. So UPS's approach to diversity, which by the way, UPS has a long, rich history of diversity and inclusion, and you'll see that in the book that I gave you. But it was really about creating a place where people could bring their authentic selves to work and do their best work. And that for me, that was the environment that I always tried to create at UPS. And I didn't care what group you were part of. I just wanted you to be connected to like-minded people that were focused on making the company more successful. And so, again, UPS has a long track record of diversity and inclusion. And I think as it relates to other businesses, we, at least when I was there, we held ourselves out as a standard for what's possible and how companies should think about diversity. In fact, if you look at UPS's board of directors today, it's probably one of the most diverse in all of America, certainly any Fortune 500 company. There are, I think, 3 or 4 women and 3 African American men, which is like unheard of for any corporate boards today.
Yeah, and how many people are on the board?
I think it's 12.
12, okay. And you're still on the board right now?
I'm not on the board of UPS. No,
Okay.
I'm on the boards of 3 or 4 other companies. 3 that are backed by private equity, and then 1 that's publicly traded.
Oh, so what are your some of your responsibilities that are on?
So on the board, so for the privately held companies that are backed by private equity, that's more of an advisory role, and they look for advice on commercial, go-to-market, marketing, sales, and with the publicly traded board, the same thing, but there's a bigger fiduciary responsibility to basically safeguard and be a steward of the investors' money.
Okay.
So, publicly traded companies, people buy stock in those companies, and they want to know that the board of directors is being good stewards and fiduciaries of those investments. And so, you have SEC regulations, and there's a lot more scrutiny for a publicly traded company than a privately held company.
All right. So you started off as just package driver in California, and you rose to like that position of president SMB. How is that possible? How did you accomplish that? What was
That's a great question. So hard work, luck, and people that were interested in my development. So, and again, UPS has a really good track record of diversity and inclusion, and so I saw that going in, and when I started there, I thought this is just kind of looking around. I thought this is a place where I think I can be successful. It's a place where I'm going to be judged based on merit and results. And for the most part, that was the case. Not always the case, but for the most part, because no place is perfect, and every company has bias. So for me, it was really about working hard, so delivering the results that I was asked to deliver, asking to do more. So whenever an opportunity came up, like a special assignment or any extra projects, I always raised my hand to volunteer. And that was the thing that got me to the first big job. I raised my hand and said, hey, look, I really want to go on a corporate special assignment. So, living in California, taking an assignment in Connecticut, and it's not an easy thing to do, right? You go 3,000 miles away, the weather's different, the people are different. But I raised my hand because I wanted to get that exposure and that experience. And so I did that. The next thing you know, and did a good job in that role. UPS asked me to relocate to Atlanta. Came to Atlanta. I could have said no, and I'd still be in California. Certainly wouldn't be sitting here talking to you, right? But I moved. I relocated. I took a chance, and so I'd say, for me, the keys to my success were always deliver results, right? I had great mentors, so people that gave advice. And then I had really good sponsors. And so the difference between mentor and sponsor is, the mentor can give you good advice, tell you what to do, what not to do. The sponsor is the person that taps you on the shoulder and puts you in certain jobs, right? Either a bigger job or a job that gets you more exposure. And so I was lucky enough to have some really good sponsors, both, African American and, white men that were instrumental in helping me navigate my career. And then I went back to school because I thought having an MBA would differentiate me from my counterparts. And I also thought it would help with what I call career insurance. Meaning, if this thing don't work out, right, I can go someplace else. And so I think the fact that, again, deliver results, had great mentors and sponsors, went back to school, right? So that shows that, you've got some initiative, you're smart because you did it, and you're hardworking. Yeah. And so I think all of those things, right, helped and enabled me to get to the position where I retired. And, part of it too is luck. Yeah. I mean, in general, people don't like to admit that, but if you are playing shortstop for the New York Yankees and you follow Derek Jeter, you're probably not going to play. Right? I don't care how good you are, right? So Derek Jeter has to retire before you're going to get that opportunity. So, there's got to have there's got to be openings, right? There's got to be some retirements, right? Some of it is timing. So a lot of good things have to fall into play, particularly in corporate America. Now, if you're an entrepreneur and you're doing your own thing, it's a different set of rules. But in corporate America, you've got to have some breaks or some things that just fall in your favor along the route. And so, for me, again, work hard, good mentors and sponsors, differentiate myself with, advanced degree, and just get results.
Yeah, and I feel like when you talked about taking advantage of opportunities, that's something that my dad has talked a lot to me about. Like, you have to take advantage of what's out there. So I think it's very important that you say that. And then also about the luck aspect. I feel like you said, it's not something a lot of people talk about. So in regards to
so what I found is the harder I work, the luckier I got. Right? The harder I worked, the better my results were, the luckier I got. The more things came my way because people, once you establish a brand for yourself, in particular corporate America, and my brand was, this guy's gonna deliver, right? People just knew it may not be exactly when they want it, but I'm gonna deliver. And so I prided myself in that I took on the most challenging assignments, the most difficult people, most difficult customers, and so that's kind of how I created a brand internally for, and as well as being a great communicator. So those were things that I did that helped differentiate me from others. But again, the harder I work, the luckier I seem to get.
Yeah, so it all comes back to that, taking opportunities, working hard.
Yeah.
So when it comes to the UPS ladder, how does that ranking work? Like, what were some of the other titles that you had to occupy before you got to where you were?
So, driver, account executive, area sales manager, director of sales, regional vice president, then president of sales operations, president of the U.S. sales organization, then president of our enterprise global accounts group, and then I finished as the president of our U.S. SMB marketing organization. So,
okay, wow. So it was a journey.
It was a journey.
It was a journey. But how long did it take?
Well, I was at UPS for 32 years. The last 16 years were all what we call management conference attendee roles. So those were the big jobs. It was 32 years, no regrets, great career, and now I'm retired, focused on building a board portfolio, which I've, knock on wood, been fortunate enough so far to do that.
So you obtained your undergraduate degree at Howard University, which is an HBCU, and it was the concentration in marketing, if I'm not mistaken. Correct. So how would you say going to an HBCU has affected your career and your sense of self? Because that's definitely something that I'm considering doing, going to an HBCU.
One of the best 3 decisions of my life. So, I grew up in California, in LA. And at that time, this is before the Cosby Show and what I call heightened awareness around HBCUs. I didn't know anything about HBCUs growing up in Southern California. So my parents really wanted me to take a look at Howard. They had friends that had attended Howard. They thought I should at least take a look. And I did. And when I went to look, I was blown away. I was just impressed with, the areas of study, just the people, the student body, the teachers, the administration. And at that time, Howard was probably not as competitive to get in. I mean, today it's virtually impossible. But it was extremely difficult to get out because the teachers knew that you're a reflection of them and the institution. So they wanted to make sure that when you got out there that you were competent, qualified, and that you'd be a good reflection on the university to then help other students that may follow. And so for me, one of the best experiences of my life, I never had to worry about, turning in a term paper and whether or not my professor was biased or not. The people that I met, lifelong friends, I pledged a college fraternity. So for me, I'd say 4 of the, or 5 of the best years of my life, but it shaped me in a way that, it gave me more confidence in self because you really get immersed in a more Afrocentric education that creates this incredible confidence of self and what your ancestors have done and our contributions to American society that I had no real awareness of. When you start to learn about, Dr. Charles Drew, one of the dorms is named after Dr. Charles Drew, who invented, blood plasma. And it just goes on and on, or Frederick Hall, so it's just so many things that you walk around that campus and you just feel this incredible sense of self as an African American.
We already talked about this a little bit, but in addition to your bachelor's at Howard, you got MBA at ASU. You did some things with the CEO Summit. So, in terms of those educational experiences too, how would you say those were necessary to your career? Did you feel like they were necessary to advance your career?
Yeah, no, they were. Everything was helpful, right? For me, it was always about continuous improvement, continuous learning. You know, understanding different points of view and perspectives, or different ways to solve a problem. So all of those things, whether it was the Yale CEO Summit, the McKinsey Masterclass, all of those things were accretive to my professional development, and learning something different, or different ways to solve a problem, or working with different people from different backgrounds. So all of those things, added up to me becoming a better leader, and delivering better results for UPS.
And when it comes to some of those problems that you faced, what were some of the problems that you said you would experience at UPS? What were some of the obstacles to your success?
Well, the job, right? Because it's hard, leading people, right? Getting people to buy into a vision of where you want to go. Sometimes with some people that were resistant, you don't know why they're resistant, because they don't like the idea, or they're resistant because I'm younger than they are, or because of the color of my skin. So, the nuance of trying to figure some of that out was always a little bit of a challenge. Or maybe not a challenge, maybe what I call an added burden that, my white counterparts didn't have to deal with. But the challenge for me was always about getting the number, driving the result. That was always the challenge. Anything else was noise. Right? For me, it was always about executing to what I have to deliver, what I'm accountable for, and then everything else was just noise. Right? If people don't want to buy in, okay, great. I'll deal with that in a different way. The challenge was always getting the results.
And you'd say that's one of the things that differentiated you, just having that sort of focus.
Yeah, laser focus. Laser focus. I'm accountable for this. And part of the reason, Sam, is so in sales, or operations at UPS, right, is very clear. There's no subjectivity. I'm 105% effective, or I'm 104% effective. If my number is better than your number, I'm better, right? There are other functions where, you can explain away things, or there's more subjectivity to it. It's not as hard and fast. And so for me, I always like to be measured against things that were clear. You can't move the goalposts. I either did it or didn't do it. Just that simple.
So you're saying that there was just like a number that you were basically summed up to. And if it was better, you got more opportunities, and vice versa.
Yeah, and like sometimes you get a better number and they like somebody else. It's just the way it works.
How do they decide that then?
Well, sometimes the goalpost moves, or they create some rationale as to why this person over you. And it can be a bitter pill to swallow when you've done all the right things, you've delivered the results, but maybe it's a style. It's just your style doesn't align with whoever the person leading the group is, right? Sometimes that's the case, right? It's more style, or maybe it is color. I don't know, but so you accept it and move on, right?
And I guess that's that luck aspect that you were talking about.
Yeah, luck. Yeah, you got a bad boss.
What is one thing about your mentality that you feel what really separated you from your peers, and how can young people with like similar interests, take a step towards the success that you were able to achieve?
So, determination. Maybe if I were going to sum it up in one word, focus and determination. Focus and determination, meaning you're not going to let anyone or anything distract you from achieving your objective. for me, I was blessed, right? My career kept moving upward. But if it had stalled at some point, I'm sure I would have taken an opportunity to look someplace else, right? If I had come across an environment, a situation, or a leader that didn't respect the results that I was driving, and if I were overlooked for opportunity, I would take my talent someplace else. But I think it's a matter of really focusing on what it is you want to do, what you're good at, and having a determination to be excellent, right? To be excellent. And again, for me, going back to school, okay, that wasn't easy because I was managing 4 states in the West Coast. I had a team of about 300 people I was responsible for. I'm getting on airplanes, flying around, and would go to meetings in the day and do homework at night, and that was my life for 2 years. And it paid off, right? It paid off because the company recognized that I did that little extra and that I could bring something of value to the organization, both near term and long term. But I think it's it's really a matter of focus and determination. And so, what determined people, make conditions, right? They don't allow themselves to be victims of their circumstances, right? They make conditions because they're focused and determined. And so, I think over the course of the majority of my career was a real narrow focus on being really good at what I was responsible for, and letting the chips fall where they may.
Make sure to like and subscribe, hit the notification bell. If you ever want to contact me about anything regarding the channel, you can contact me at themaggieWalkerProject@gmail.com. It'll also be linked in the description. So with that, I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.